In this episode, we speak with Carmine Petrone, a managing director at Advent International, one of the largest and most experienced global private equity investors with over $94 billion in assets under management. Carmine joined Advent in 2010 and focuses on making investments in the healthcare and healthcare technology sectors. Prior to Advent, he worked for Thomas H. Lee Partners, where he was a generalist investor with a focus on leveraged buyouts in the financial and business services and healthcare industries. Carmine has also spent time working in the hedge fund industry. He started his career in investment banking with Citigroup Global Markets, where he was a member of the global healthcare team. Carmine was recognized by GrowthCap as a top 25 healthcare investor of 2024. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
Carmine, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Likewise. Thanks, RJ.
So we're honored to have Advent International on. We're honored to have you on. For the benefit of our audience, can you tell us about Advent and its long history and where it's involved, geographically and sector-wise?
Sure. No, so this is actually an exciting year. This is the 40th year that Advent has been operating. We're based in Boston, but we are known for being quite a global investor. So we've got 14 offices across 12 different countries, and they're all investing with the same philosophy. So we think of ourselves as being private equity focused with this subsector expertise. I represent healthcare in the US, and we're deploying capital at scale. Scale means slightly different things depending on the geography, but we're not doing venture investing. We're not doing growth investing. We think of ourselves as being a scale investor looking for relevant businesses that are market leading, that we can help scale further in their respective geographies and ideally take them cross border. And so right now we're investing out of our 10th fund program, which is a $25 billion fund. That's our global private equity fund. And then we've selectively added other products over time. So we have had a long-standing and successful Latin America private equity program, which has a $2 billion dedicated fund to it. And then we made a big investment in our technology investment capabilities a few years ago, and they are currently investing out of a technology vehicle that has $4 billion of committed capital. So that'll participate if we do a larger software deal in the larger global fund, but then it also gives them capability to invest in earlier stage or minority assets as well.
Fantastic. And I remember maybe 2-3 decades ago when I used to think of Advent International, it was that you were clearly a global, and that was a big differentiator among other private equity firms. And as the industry evolved, others became global as well. How do you differentiate to kind of the CEOs and management teams that you talk to the uniqueness of Advent's platform?
Sure. I think it comes back to what I mentioned, sort of the specialization by sector at scale. So we are working with businesses where we have a deep thesis in a specific sector and leveraging not just the deal team's expertise, but we've got a very robust portfolio support group. We have a great network of what we call operations advisors that work hand in glove with portfolio support in the deal team. Think of them as being ex-CXOs. So it could be an ex-CHRO, it could be ex-CIO, ex-CFO that can really, as we think about what is our value creation plan for that team, get rid of roadblocks, look around corners. If we expect this business to be 3, 4, 5 times the size whenever we are endeavoring to exit, well, that's going to require some interesting infrastructure and people investments to keep pace. And so we want to be able to leverage in a supportive, constructive way that expertise to help the teams that we're backing recognize that, but then successfully and quickly make those investments before you realize you've outstripped some sort of capability 2-3 years in. So that's one key differentiator. We have a network of operating partners that we think really help hone the thesis up front. Are we looking in the right neighborhoods? Have we selected the right team and platform to partner with? But then again, from a more strategic and CEO mentorship perspective, they've all been there, done that before. They're not looking to run the companies or have a hand on the steering wheel, but really provide that good counsel to CEOs because they've done that before. They've been in their shoes and doubled, tripled, or more the size of the business that they were operating. And so it's always helpful to have somebody who is a guide for the journey in a way. They haven't seen everything, but they can give the CEOs a bit more confidence to lean in different places or to make the hard decisions on what might need to be changed or what do you need to invest a bit more in because it could be an impediment. So I'd say all of that is kind of really helpful ingredients to make for a successful outcome. And we pride ourselves on making sure we're all aligned to the same outcome. So we don't have a secret outcome that we keep in a drawer. Whatever we think, however we underwrote the deal, we very quickly harmonize that. And this is the outcome we all want. And we back solve. So what are we going to do and prioritize in each of the, let's say it's over 5 years, each of those years, and add those ingredients as necessary and take them away when they're no longer. So I think people appreciate that. It's not templatized. There's a lot of, not just enthusiasm or passion, but, real expertise to back it up. And hopefully, as everybody's sort of laying out what their case is and what the outcome is, the probability of us in partnership with them achieving that outcome is higher than some of the alternatives they might be considering. You mentioned the global piece. Sometimes that comes into play. Healthcare tends to be very local, but, for some of the services businesses and products businesses that we invest in, a key part of the thesis is how do I strategically source maybe from a certain part of the world, or how do I go from distribution to direct in a certain part of the world? And, we've leveraged our colleagues and expertise to do that really effectively. So yeah, you could expand into Asia, but who's the partner you should really think about going to? Because we've observed them in the market for the last 20 years, as opposed to you're looking at 15 logos on a sheet and one may not resonate more or less than another. So I think we can help them make better decisions to the extent that global expansion is something that's important.
Now, you've been focused on healthcare. How did that come about? When you joined the firm, did you say this is the sector that I pick? And so you've kind of stuck with it?
It was a long journey. I was probably like many folks considering medicine when I was in high school. And my parents encouraged me to have some conversations to confirm whether or not that was the path I wanted to go down. And they didn't necessarily have a bias one way or the other, but I think the push and, the help to set up some of those conversations pointed me in a direction where I wanted to pursue more of a business path. But again, they sort of gave advice. Well, look at how many people have a generic business background. You should think about maybe coupling it with the sciences in some way. And so, that led to a lot of financially oriented internships and things like that, but kind of kept coming back to healthcare. So the first job I had out of college was in healthcare investment banking, and then went to a private equity firm from there, which was a generalist model, but healthcare was some of what I did. And then when I joined Advent, it was really focusing on financial services and healthcare. And then over time, over 10 years ago, I stopped spending time on financial services and it's just been healthcare. So it's always been kind of in the background and or the foreground at different points. But I love the industry and have had chances to pick a different one or move away from healthcare over time. And, fortunate that there's a magnetic force that keeps drawing me back to it.
Well, healthcare is such a massive industry and there's, different segments within healthcare. Can you give us the flavors of healthcare that you've worked in, maybe the
Mhm.
different segments where you've spent a lot of time and maybe have done transactions in?
Sure. I think what motivates all of us is to find concepts that we think can deliver better outcomes to more patients at a lower cost, which is ultimately what the system needs. If you just look at the amount expended on improving health and sustaining health every year by various governments or otherwise, consumers directly. And so that then manifests itself in a number of different subsectors that we actively look for opportunities. So we define healthcare fairly broadly, but that's sort of always our North Star. And that has led us to selectively invest in certain verticals that directly provide patient care that we think are cheaper than alternatives, that have some strategic recognition or value by a health plan or otherwise, and that can demonstrate that they have better outcomes and patients prefer it. So that's been an area such as post-acute care where we have a large portfolio company that, we find attractive. So it's much more micro. It's where is there a key patient population that has real needs and what's a better solution to help to deliver a better outcome to them, as opposed to just aggregating scale, people getting older, a much more kind of generic approach to provision of care. So that's kind of one pocket. There's a whole host of businesses, whether it's care delivery businesses or pharma companies, et cetera, that are re-engineering their business processes and trying to become more efficient, either because they have lower margins, like the healthcare providers, or it's just not their core competency. There's certain things pharma is great at and not in others. And so how can we build really great service providers to those businesses that can help them realize efficiencies so they can treat more patients, spend more on R&D, whatever it might be, but help them get back to doing their core mission more successfully. So that's a big area of focus, and it runs the gamut of the healthcare ecosystem. And so we have, contract manufacturer and API manufacturing businesses within the pharma realm. We have distribution businesses. We've invested in pharmacy businesses. If you think about sort of partners to both providers and the drug industry. So quite a diversity of business models there. And then we spend a lot of time around healthcare IT too. So, I think for the same reason, these businesses are going through these digital transformations. What are the best pieces of technology a provider could leverage, or pharma company or med device company? We're looking for those solutions too. So, we've got a few different current investments and then a prior investment that touched process reengineering for health plans, revenue cycle for hospitals, and then helping pharma companies commercialize their products and bring them to market more efficiently. And so, like kind of everywhere we look, there's no shortage of opportunities, we think, to help the system not only get more efficient, but to help all of these underlying constituents sort of do the right thing, do more for their patients, do more for their end customers.
Along these lines of technology, how much time do you spend on AI or understanding the impact that AI is going to have on the industry?
There's so much potential, not only to realize if you're one of these more traditional actors within pharma or within provision of care, to utilize these technologies to sort of better inform clinical decision making, to validate different clinical drug targets, on and on and on. Like the possibilities are limitless, and there are dramatic steps forward in throughput to help these businesses do even more. And so, we think a lot about, if we're to invest directly in one, how could we deploy AI within it to realize some of those same benefits? But also from a healthcare IT investment perspective, how can we use some of these same foundational tools and productize those and bring them to market for different end users? And so it comes up quite a bit as we think about, there's a lot of tech-enabled services. And there are even some software businesses that we think about, well, what is the AI risk to this? And does this tech-enabled service have staying power over the next 5 to 10 years? Because undoubtedly the labor is going to come out of it. And does the contract structure and sort of the other customer relationship elements of it, does it allow them to keep some of the margin, or does the pricing collapse, right? Because, you kind of threw labor at a problem that was more technology oriented than not. And, I think AI is going to help leapfrog some of that. And so, we have some questions about some of these businesses, particularly on the offshoring and outsourcing side.
And when it comes to maybe some of the more nascent or not yet fully mature businesses, is there a kind of a minimum threshold that they have to meet in order for Advent to take a serious look at it?
It depends on what subsector. If it's a software business with the separate dedicated technology vehicle, there's a lot of flexibility there. So, it would be able to write a $50 million equity check and invest into a business. So that could be a much more earlier stage business, or participate in sort of a broader, more syndicated funding round. So we try not to have too bright of a cut line on the healthcare IT side. We're not doing seed investing, so there naturally is something there. But, if there's a business that has 20 to 50 million of ARR and is compounding quite quickly, we'll obviously take a look at that. And, hopefully it's aligned to one of our underlying themes and how we're sourcing investment opportunities. So there's hopefully IP that we've developed around it that would say, this is a great mousetrap. We've been watching it scale. How can we play it? On the other side, the practical reality of the $25 billion fund, the cutoff there is more of a 500 million plus investment. So that just necessitates a certain amount of scale. And so, typically that would be businesses with at least 50 million or so of EBITDA. And I'd say one of the most exciting things about Advent is it's a very entrepreneurial place, and we're partnering with very entrepreneurial teams. So the deal teams have a lot of wherewithal to choose where we want to spend time and how we might unlock an opportunity that's best suited to capitalize on a certain theme. And if that means you got to start smaller with a like-minded team and provide more capital over time, we've done that in a number of instances. So we're not that dogmatic about, it's got to be within these certain parameters. But by the same token, we also can't have 100 portfolio companies in the funds. We try to manage it as appropriate and make sure that we're just constructing the best portfolio.
Now, you've been with Advent for, I think, the majority of your career for a long time. The firm has clearly set a solid foundation from which to build. It retains its talent, it grows its talent. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes Advent special with regards to the culture and the organization that it's built?
Yeah, I'd probably highlight two things, and you hit it on the investment in talent. I'd say if you were to walk around here and talk to colleagues, it would be manifested in two different ways. One, as we talk about firm strategy and where we might think about growth coming from, the underlying theme behind that is always to do right by our customers, but to do right by our colleagues. And how can we create additional opportunity for our colleagues to grow, as opposed to just growth for some other reason? And so I think, the growth is always aligned to the right aspiration, which is to yield better outcomes for our customers and then yield better career outcomes for everybody that's chosen to work with us on the team. And then when you think about it just more on a practical day-to-day basis, I'd say some of what we've deployed internally, regularly measuring employee engagement, up and down the line from an associate, which is an entry-level employee, all the way up to a partner who has mentors. What are you meeting on? Do you have a quarterly development goal, sit down, et cetera? There's a good kind of top-down confirmation of what the mission and what motivates everybody, but then there's a lot of the necessary activity at the bottom to drive to that outcome. And, it's not just lip service. So I think that's really important. There's a lot of investment in talent. And then I'd say the other piece is, again, it comes back to that entrepreneurial spirit. So, the firm has always had that ethos to invest in leading growth businesses and to help them scale. And the starting point may have gotten incrementally bigger as the fund has gotten bigger. But what we really want to do, which is either sort of transform a business and help it grow faster or accelerate a business that's already growing really well, has been a constant. And so it's attracted a certain type of person here that is very motivated to find exciting investment opportunities and isn't sitting around looking for somebody to tell them what to do. We've got to match that desire and capability, of course, with what we're doing in the day-to-day. But I think the firm's really, really excelled at leveraging that desire over time so that people don't get bored. They don't feel like they could be doing more somewhere else. I think this has been a great platform for people that share that vision.
Okay, final two questions. One, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound impact on you?
Yes, I'm probably old-fashioned and boring, and that I would say it's my mom and dad. So fortunate that they're both around, and we had a great family growing up, and taught the basics around humility and having mercy and understanding and being able to communicate with somebody else who might not share your point of view. So I think a lot of those basic things have to come from somewhere, and was fortunate that I was able to pick it up from them at a pretty early age. And then, I've had other mentors over the years, but like kind of that initial just career advice in helping me decide what did I really want to do. You got to do what makes you happy, but what's your edge? Don't be generic. And, that's something I've heard from professional mentors over the years, but it really started with them. So it's been invaluable advice. Hopefully I can replicate it again, for my own kids and the people I work with.
Excellent. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Sure. So I had the good fortune when I was right out of college, there was a sort of a personal issue that led me to supporting a children's hospital of Johns Hopkins, which I didn't have an attachment to other than, I graduated from there. And, that led to a relationship with the university that grew over time, and was fortunate to join as a trustee a few years ago. And I know universities are not as in vogue right now for good reasons. Some of the discourse and protests on campus, and the perception that they're sort of out of touch with what's going on in the country, and a variety of other reasons which we don't need to litigate. But I think at the core, if you think about what a university's mission is, and there are many universities out there that are doing the right thing, I think it's to bring people together with disparate viewpoints to have these discussions and learn how to coexist in a society. It's pretty foundational to a democracy. And so anyway, I've found, just kind of by happen chance, through the medical vein of Johns Hopkins, but then back to the core mission of the university, something that's really rewarding for a variety of different reasons. But I think that at the core. And then there's an amazing benefactor, Michael Bloomberg, who's investing in a lot of other cutting edge things at the university, AI, as you mentioned, that sort of makes it even more exciting. But I think, now more than ever, we got to find ways to create these forums for people to talk about different viewpoints and chart a path forward together. So, I think it really all starts at the university.
Well, Carmine, I want to thank you again for taking the time for this conversation. This has been wonderful, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, thanks for doing this.